Hi, everybody. Tim Hughes here, the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. With me today, I've got Gary McClain, and we're going to be talking about his book, The Power of Closure, why we want it, how to get it, and when to walk away. Gary, this is just a fantastic book about closure. If there is anybody out there that is wanting to get closure or wanting to understand what it's about or what it's not about, this is a fantastic book. I loved it.
Thank you so
And
much.
I mean, there is so many situations where, and you also use, situations, relationships is a classic one where where either we dumped somebody or they dumped us, and we think about what could have happened or what might not have happened. But
Yes.
before we talk about it, where can people find you, Gary?
I have a website. It's called powerofclosure.com. And that's, again, powerofclosure.com. And that's a great place to learn some more about the book and about me and some of my blogs as well. And
It's it,
thanks for that. Thanks
And
for
and
asking.
I checked out your website, and it's a fantastic place. Again, if people are looking for any form of closure in any shape or short form, which many of us are, or maybe looking for it, it's a great place. So, what was the inspiration behind the book, Gary?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have so often had this conversation over the years as a psychotherapist, so often had this conversation with clients who ask the same question: how can I get closure? Or I demand closure, or I have to get closure. An array of situations, relationships, job loss, family situations, death. But the word closure just so often comes up. So I was just inspired to write a book and try to help people to understand their need for closure and to look at themselves and their motivation, their intentions, and then give them some guidance on how to find closure, or, as the subtitle includes, when to walk away as well.
And we'll get on to that because that's just as important. So, why do you think that we're looking for closure?
I think there are some classic reasons that bring people to wanting to find closure. I think one is just feeling helpless. We're not speaking. There's no answer here. Where there's loose ends. I can't sit with this. This uncertainty, this helplessness. I've got to get closure. Got to talk this out. For example, excuse me, anger. It's a situation. For example, a dating situation. I thought we were doing well. All of a sudden, you avoided me, you ghosted me, as we say. I'm just so angry about that. I've got to talk this out and tell you why I'm angry. Forgiveness is another reason. Seeking forgiveness from another person. I did you wrong. I have to be forgiven. Or or you should ask for my forgiveness. Again, forgiveness. Sometimes there's just pain, feeling in pain. How can I make this pain go away? I feel.
So,
Go
so,
ahead.
why do you think the promise of closure is so appealing?
I think as human beings, we don't like loose ends in communication. We like to have things tied up, and and I think that's a big motivator for closure. I just feel, there's a loose end here. There's something that needed to be said, something that needs to be understood, and I have to find a way to get that. So I think it's just human beings not liking loose ends in communication.
And so, I think it's probably important to say what isn't closure.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think what isn't closure is when the other person, for example, won't have that conversation. The other person just says, I can't have this conversation for whatever reason. I don't want to bring this up again. I've made it clear I don't want to be around you anymore, or I think we've solved this already. It's settled. I don't want to revisit it. or or with death. With when someone dies, we want closure, and we really can't get the closure that we want with this person because they're not with us anymore. So these are situations where I think we have to, one thing I often say to my clients is that sometimes the closure you're going to get is to accept that there's no closure. And people don't always want to hear that. But sometimes we just have to accept, okay, there's not going to be closure. I have to live with that. I have to move on, and as I say in my subtitle, to be able to walk away. So we don't. The other person may not be willing, may not be able to give us that closure, and we have to be okay with that.
Because you give an example in the book about a relationship that comes to an end, and there's a discussion that goes on about the relationship and that, and what happens is a couple of days later, a box arrives for the person,
Yeah,
and the person thinks, oh great, a box, is this like a bunch of flowers, or is this an apology? And in the box is everything, every single gift that that person has ever given, and in a way that's the other person getting closure, but also a certain amount of saying something, f you. And
exactly.
of course that can turn a situation where you've had a conversation, and that will create anger. It's like, why would you send all that stuff back to me?
Exactly. Yes, and that's an example that I've encountered really a few times. Where someone gets a box with everything, maybe everything that they had left at the other person's apartment, clothing items, whatever, toothbrush, or gifts that they had given that person, that the other person saying, I don't want these gifts anymore. I don't want memories of you. And that's a very one-sided closure. The other person has a sense of closure, but you don't. You still aren't able to say, why did you do this? What did I do wrong? Why do we have to end this way? You don't have that opportunity. The other person is saying, enough. Here's my closure. And again, that's a situation of coming to an acceptance. Okay, well, I did the best I could. I tried. They're not willing to have this conversation. I have to find a way to be okay with that, and that's hard. It's hard.
So how do we seek closure in a healthy and productive way?
I'm a big fan of intentionality, having clear intentions, and I think that starts with really sitting down with yourself and saying and being self-aware. Why do I need closure? And am I seeking closure for healthy reasons that we can talk this out? Or am I looking for a chance to kind of dump on the other person? Am I looking for an opportunity to say something really mean, to get revenge? Am I looking to say something or do something really mean to them to sort of get back at them?
Yeah.
And if your self-talk, your self-awareness around closure is all about being mean, this may not be a good reason to seek closure, because then you're going to have repercussions that you have to live with after that. So I think just knowing, why do I want to seek closure? Are these healthy reasons for me, for the other person, that we can tie up these loose ends, maybe shake hands, or closure can be a reset in a relationship. We've had a very unsided or one-sided relationship. I've been doing a lot of giving. I'm not getting much back. Or I feel like you're giving and I'm not giving much back. Let's get some closure on this and do a reset
Mm.
as well. It doesn't have to be an end. It can be a reset, a way forward. But I think it's important to seek closure out of compassion.
And
And
what do you mean by a reset? Is that let's shake hands and go our own way, or restart?
restart, exactly right. A reset can be a restart. We haven't been as kind to each other as we could be, or I've been giving and I'm not receiving much back, or vice versa. Or we've had constant issues come up. Let's talk about what's getting in the way of our relationship. Let's talk about how we can move forward in a healthier way. And closure can be a way forward as well. It doesn't have to be a hard stop.
And I guess relationships are hard work.
Hard work.
And having a communication path between each other to actually talk to each other and say, without having, because quite often what happens is that you relationships have their own, end up in their own habits and patterns and stuff like that. And
Yes.
quite often you don't take the time to sit down and talk to each other. And having that communication path is so important, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, Tim. I think that's just really, really important. And there's a kind of a cliche about don't go to bed angry.
Mm,
And, I think that there's a lot of wisdom to that. I think you can find closure every day by being open with each other,
mm.
being open and saying, I didn't quite understand what you meant by that. Or I felt, when you said that, I kind of felt kind of hurt, or I felt disrespected, or I felt misunderstood. Let's talk that out. And I think you can build a relationship with someone where every day you're getting closure. Every day you're being clear and tying up again those loose ends.
And being intentional, and I remember when I was in my 20s and I went into sales, and there was a salesman mentor who'd been married for 30 years or something,
Mhm.
and I said to him, what's the secret of your marriage? And he said, we always go to sleep at night with, if we've had a fight, we say sorry, we tell each other we love each other, and we always go to sleep knowing that we are happy in our relationship. And I know that's a real cliche, but I think it's really true.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's brilliant. I think that really says it all. Closure can be a daily process. Absolutely.
So why isn't closure always what it's cracked up to be?
Well, I think because we're human, and we're as humans, we're not always able to express ourselves as clearly as we want to, and we can't always, we can't. Well, what I always say to my clients is, people are who they are. We can't control how other people think, feel, or behave. We cannot control other people. We don't always have control over whether they hear and really understand what we're trying to say. Sometimes people can be so caught up in their own opinions, the need to be right at all
Or,
costs.
or their own belief system, or
Yes. Perception is reality. At
it
least
is.
it's your reality.
Yeah.
And sometimes our perceptions of a situation are so strong, entrenched, that we just cannot be open to the other person's position.
So one of the things you give is great counsel on. Okay, so you want to get closure, so you're gonna have a meeting with that person,
Yeah.
and then how to run that meeting. And one of the interesting things that you said was about this talk track in your head. You said that everybody basically had, when they go to one of those meetings, they have this talk track about how that conversation is going to go. And what happens is it never goes like you think it will go in your head. And you give some advice to actually, is when you is to be, I don't want to put the words in your mouth, but to be very clear, but um, but also to not have this talk track, because it won't go like that.
Yes, absolutely. I think one of the biggest barriers to effective communication is rehearsing conversations, where you walk into a conversation with an agenda. Here's how this is going to go.
Hmm.
And I'm going to make sure I'm going to say this, and I know what you're going to say. And here's my response to that. And then I know what you're going to say, because that's rehearsed. Then we start to force that agenda on the other person. The other person's like, what's going on here? I didn't say that. Why are you throwing this at me? And I think we have to walk into a conversation around closure knowing what we want to express. I've been feeling like things have been going this way. I feel this way as a result. I'd like to talk to you about that. I'm here because I have some things I want to say to you, but I want to hear what you have to say.
Yes.
I think it's important to walk in with an open mind, knowing I might not hear everything I want to hear,
Mm.
but this is a two-way.
And that's the thing, isn't it? That this isn't a one-way conversation. It will be a two-way conversation,
Exactly.
and you need to be, you need to stop to allow the other person to speak, and what they may say may be not what you believe to be the case, and may not be what you want.
Absolutely. And again, that part of the intention is that can we clarify with each other how we've been feeling and thinking and behaving? Can we clarify, and then we come to some kind of an understanding, whether that's okay, let's agree to disagree, shake hands, nice to know you, or can we find a better way to communicate and again reset going forward?
So So if that meeting doesn't go well, or whether there may be a death or something like that, where we're never going to get closure, how do we move forward if we don't get it? Because we're going to be angry, aren't we?
Absolutely. I think that's a very, really good question. I think talking things out with a friend, a family member, a therapist, talking things out. I think it's really important to talk what's on our mind and maybe get another perspective. And I think it's also important just to be able to embrace your life. Okay, this didn't work out, or I'm angry. I'm gonna go out and have some fun. I'm going to talk things out with some friends. I'm going to be around people who care about me. I'm going to get some activity. I'm going to get involved in my work. There are, I think just embracing our life and saying, okay, I'm going to work on letting go with this, let go of this and move forward. And I do that by really embracing my life.
You do a piece at the end of the book, that's really touching about the time that you spent with your mum,
Right.
and the way that, you in effect you I didn't ask you if I could talk about this.
Fun.
And the way that you used the closure that you got with your mum helped you get over other pieces of in your life. Do you mind talking about that?
Sure. Yeah. I took care of my mom with my siblings for a couple of years, and I was 5 states away, so I would visit for 4 days a month. And in between watching police procedurals over and over and over, we had a lot of conversations, and it just my mom had a lot of things that she had dealt with as a child that I think she needed to talk about. She needed me to know, and we took drives together, and we turned the TV off and had conversations while we had dinner, whatever. And I just think my mom had a lot of things she needed me to know, and I think this is part of her getting closure on her own life, was to know that she had imparted that to me. And a lot of it broke my heart. It's hard to know that your parents have suffered.
Yes.
Well, I wasn't there to fix it. I wish I had been. I wasn't there to fix it. But to know that your parents have had difficulties as children, for example, and suffered. And then you start to realize, now I know why my parents encouraged certain things, why they behaved in certain ways, why certain things pushed their buttons. Now I know, because of what they went through as children, and how they wanted to do things differently with their own children. And it just so much came together during those
But
conversations
it,
with my mom.
I mean, it's beautiful how you end the book on that piece, because you give these examples as you go through about, and you kind of, and we've all been through a lot of these things, or certainly when you get to my age, you've been through a number of these things.
Yes.
And then what you do is you use your own example, but what you do is that you do it in a way to say, because we're looking for closure, and it's like, maybe you're looking in the wrong place. And maybe what you can do is that you worked with your mother to enable you to get closure around other things about the way that they brought you up, and the way that I think you've got brothers and sisters rebelled against the way that you were brought up.
Yes.
And you got closure by doing this. I got closure because of this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I learned a lot about myself in those conversations, ways that I'm similar to my parents, of course, and how my upbringing has impacted me. And it you're right. It gave me a lot of my own understanding about my life and decisions that I've made and the way that I've lived my life. Absolutely.
And I had to wipe a tear away from my eye but it was just a lovely way of using yourself as the metaphor to say, sometimes life is hard, but we can look for happiness and joy in different places.
Absolutely. Life, and you're right. I say that often, and my clients often say life is hard, and I say I agree, but life is also filled with joy if we seek the joy, and the pain helps us to appreciate the joy that much more.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Gary, thank you so much for coming on and talking about your book, The Power of Closure, why we want it, how to get it, and when to walk away. So if I wanted to buy a copy of this, I can get it on Amazon, can I?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Definitely.
And where can we find you?
Again, on my website, powerofclosure.com. And I also have an email address on there. If you want to send me a question or a comment, you're welcome to do that. And I do respond as well. Absolutely.
Gary, thank you so much for coming on. I must have the best job in the world, talking to authors about their books. Adam Gray has just put in his final comment. Wow, a new perspective on how to get over things. Thank you very much, Adam.
Thank you.
And he says thanks, guys, as well. So
thank you.
Appreciate it. So, Gary, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us.
Tim, thank you so much. This was a wonderful experience, and I appreciate you so much.